Ayrton Senna made his first Formula One start. Just 1 year later, in rainy Estoril, Portugal, Senna took his first Formula One pole and his first victory. He was on course and headed straight to the top of the motorsports world. 5 years later, with 46 poles and 23 victories, Ayrton Senna, the fastest man in Formula One, will start his milestone 100th race today in the Grand Prix of Mexico. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. Mexico City, by consensus the most populous of any city in the world, today plays host to round 6 of the World Driving Championship. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. We are just 2 weeks and 2,000 miles from round 5 in Montreal, Canada. But we are a world apart in terms of ambiance and literally atmosphere. One thing the two cities have in common, however, is wet weather at this time of year. We've had showers on and off all weekend here in Mexico City, and rain is expected before today is out. This is the 13th running of the Grand Prix of Mexico, the 5th since the race was reinstated on the Formula One calendar in 1986. Only the late Jim Clark has won this race more than once. Today, Ayrton Senna, Gerhard Berger, Nigel Mansell, and Alain Prost will have a chance to duplicate that feat. With me once again is ESPN Formula One analyst David Hobbs. And David, this 13th running of the Mexican GP has not been a lucky one for Senna thus far.
Well, if you mean he wasn't on the pole, that's true. He, in fact, only managed to qualify third, and he tried jolly hard to do that, doing a lot of laps on Friday and Saturday. However, his teammate Gerhard Berger is on the pole and got there very quickly, doing a minimum amount of laps on Friday and Saturday. But he's a man with something to prove, because remember 2 weeks ago, he got docked a penalty beginning of the race, came through the field and finished a fine 4th, and he's convinced that he can now beat Ayrton Senna. Another man who qualified well yesterday afternoon was Nigel Mansell, who had an absolutely cracking lap going for him, fell foul of slow traffic and still qualified 4th. A man who qualified very well yesterday afternoon, a bit of a surprise to everybody, was Nakajima, who's 9th, only 0.3 of a second slower than his superstar teammate John Alesi. Where, you ask, is Alain Prost? Well, where, you might ask. He is 13th spot, the lowest he has qualified for many, many years, and a very depressed man this morning. What's causing all this? Well, it's partly the altitude here, 7,000 feet. And with more on that, let's go down to John Bizignano.
Thank you, David. In Formula One, as in physics, for every action there is a reaction. And the altitude of Mexico City affects almost every aspect of a modern Grand Prix racer. First of all, the normally aspirated engines lose almost 20% in horsepower. Now, the teams must react to that by coming up with as little drag on the car as possible. As you can see on this spare Tyrrell, they're using an absolute minimum size rear wing. Now, that creates low grip. And the reaction to low grip is tire spin and the car is slipping and sliding through the corners. The reaction to that, high tire temperatures, blistering, and high wear. When you add it all up, the Mexico City circuit is one of the most difficult tracks for a team to fine-tune their chassis for the maximum performance. And the reaction to that is some of the most interesting and challenging, exciting racing on the Grand Prix Tour here at the Mexican Grand Prix.
A year ago, Ayrton Senna tied the late Jim Clark's record of 33 career poles here in Mexico. This year, he can tie another legend, Juan Manuel Fangio, for 4th on the all-time win list. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico is brought to you by Mobil. Mobil One Synthetic Motor Oil. Isn't your car worth the extra protection? By Suzuki Motorcycles and ATVs. Suzuki, the ride you've been waiting for. And by Budweiser. Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. 26 cars are primed and ready for the start of round 6 of the Formula One World Championship for 1990. Stay with us.
Back to El Gran Premio de Mexico. With apologies to every Spanish teacher I ever had, we're just moments away from the start of round 6 of the Drivers' World Championship for 1990. And here's the way our 26 cars will present themselves for the green light. On the pole for the 6th time in his career on the track where he won his first Formula One race back in 1986, Gerhard Berger of Austria in the McLaren Honda carrying an onboard camera. Next to him will be Italy's Riccardo Patrese in the Williams Renault, just 27/100ths of a second off the pole. On row 2, Ayrton Senna suffering from allergies on this weekend of his 100th Grand Prix start, but he's making no excuses. Next to him, Englishman Nigel Mansell. David told you about his wild qualifying run. He wound up 0.5 of a second off pole. On row 3, Terry Boutsen of Belgium in the Williams Renault, the subject of a lot of speculation up and down the pit lane about his future with the Williams team. Next to him, the man who may someday replace him, Jean Alesi of France in the Tyrrell, reportedly has already signed with Frank Williams. On row 4, Pierluigi Martini of Italy. In the Minardi Ford, another V8 doing well. He and Elisi, the best from the V8 crowd. Next to him in the 8th spot will be Nelson Piquet of Brazil in the Benetton Ford, coming off his best finish in 3 years, second 2 weeks ago in Montreal. On row 5, Satoru Nakajima of Japan, qualifying well in the Tyrrell. Next to him will be Italy's Stefano Modena in the Brabham with Judd V8 power. On row 6, Derek Warwick of Great Britain in the Lotus Lamborghini, and for the 3rd time in 6 races, qualifying right behind him, his Lotus teammate Martin Donnelly, also from the British Isles. On row 7 will be Alain Prost of France, who has scored 3 times in 4 starts here in Mexico. He'll have his work cut out for him in the Ferrari today. Next to him, Alessandro Nannini of Italy in the Benetton Ford, also the subject of a lot of pit lane rumors about his future. On row 8 will be Andrea De Cesaris in the Dallara, 141 races and counting with no victories. Next to Italian countryman Paolo Barilla in the Minardi Ford in his first Mexican Grand Prix start. Row 9 will be Michele Alboreto of Italy with an onboard camera in the Arrows Ford, next to Emanuele Pirro of Italy in the Dallara. Row 10 will be Aguri Suzuki, who crashed heavily in Friday practice in the Larousse. Next to him, Olivier Grouillard of France in the Osella. Row 11 will be David Brabham of Australia, starting the Brabham on the track where his father's Formula One career ended back in 1970. Next to him will be Philippe Alliot of France, who scored his first points here in that race in 1986, won by Berger. Alliot in the Ligier. On row 12 will be Gregor Wojtek, the Swiss driver in the Onyx Ford, next to Nicola Laurini of Italy in the Ligier. Row 13 will be Eric Bernard of France, who crashed heavily on Saturday, keeping the LaRousse mechanics busy. Next to him, young Finnish driver J.J. Leto, the final qualifier for Onyx, under some fairly extraordinary circumstances. We learn more as we take a look at who missed the cut for today's race. Neither of the hapless Leighton House Judd-powered cars, Ivan Capelli, who qualified 4th here last year, is not in. Neither is Maurizio Gugelmin, who has yet to finish a race in 1990. Alex Caffey of Italy missed out in the Arrows Ford. Yannick Dalmas and Gabriel Tarquini in the AGS cars. Bertrand Gachot in the Coloni Subaru. Claudio Langes, his career up and down with the Eurobrun team, lasted 3 laps here. 1 lap for Bruno Giacomelli of Italy in the life-powered car. Disqualified from the weekend's activities on Friday was Roberto Moreno in the Eurobrun car. As you know, in Formula One, you cannot push start the car. That is usually the case in races, but this weekend it was extended to practice and qualifying as well. Moreno very upset after the race. He says his team manager never told him that you could be excluded for push starting. The racetrack is 2.747 miles around. It is very fast, very bumpy, and very exciting. Let's take a corner-by-corner look now with David Hobbs, courtesy of the onboard camera in the McLaren Honda of Ayrton Senna.
Ayrton Senna exits the Peraltada at about 155 miles an hour, takes 6 gears. He crosses the line, just starting his qualifying lap yesterday afternoon. Car builds up to about 195 miles an hour down this long front straight. They would go faster, but at 7,000 feet, these engines are losing about 20% of their power. Hard on the brakes, down to 2nd gear for turn 1. Tight right-hander. Up to 3rd gear for turn 2 and 3, a left-right sweep. Exits turn 3, now quite a long straight, up to 5th gear down here at about 155 miles an hour. Shoots under the bridge, then hard on the brakes, back down to 4th as he swings left and right, and then hard on the brakes again as he comes into turn 6, and he selects 2nd gear again as he turns into turn 6, a right-hander, tight right-hander, and picks up speed all the way through what they now call the S's. The road just swings right, left, right, 3rd gear here, up to 4th as these corners get progressively faster and faster, and as you can see, also very bumpy into 4th gear there. Goes to this last left-hander, up to 5th gear here. Corner 12, right-hander. Now into turn 13, very fast left-hander. Takes 6th gear there, and the car gets up to around about 180 miles an hour. Into the Peraltada, on the brakes, down to 5th. A quick snick there, and really one of the fastest, hardest corners in Formula One racing. Bounces out of there at about 155 miles an hour, and takes 6th gear as he crosses the line.
All right, thank you, David, and thank you, Mr. Senna. We'll be back for the start of round 6 of the 1990 World Championship, the Grand Prix of Mexico. The cars are about to begin their reconnaissance lap. We'll take a look at the weather conditions right now. 76 degrees, but under bright... Humidity 50%, cloudy, chance of rain throughout the day, but right now there are patches of blue sky above us. All that can change very quickly. That's one thing we've learned this weekend here in Mexico City. 2 teams will be carrying our onboard cameras today. We're glad to have the McLaren, so we'll get a look from poleman Gerhard Berger's car, and also in the Arrows Ford being driven by Michele Alboreto. And we may have some very special cameras today if things work out with the host broadcasters from Mexico. Right now, while the cars begin warming tires and engine, let's get a last-second update from John Bizignano in the pits.
Well, as they complete their first lap around this beautiful circuit, there are some problems down on the grid, especially with Alesi. His race car stopped out on the circuit. He jumped into the spare, only had moments to leave the pit lane. He's not happy with the handling. Can you imagine on this circuit not being happy with the handling? Also, Michele Alboreto in a spare arrows, and also out on the grid with a lot of work going down into the cockpit is the young Brabham driver, Mr. Brabham himself. He's not happy with the electrics on that car, and they're having a lot of problems making it sound right going down this long straightaway. Some kind of electrical problem, either in the cockpit or on the black box. Everyone else in really good shape. The McLaren of Berger, they're doing communications work in his helmet. He's having a heck of a problem trying to hear the management from the pit lane. That might add up to a problem later on, but right now, the grid looks pretty good going down this very long straightaway and on the backstretch.
All right, thank you very much, John. It is warming up very rapidly, and as you have heard right now from John, there are a couple of teams still having problems. And with the kind of beating that the cars take on this racetrack, David, I would guess we're going to see some more as the day wears on.
Yeah, we are. And I see the tires are already out there on pit road. I know that some teams were going to try to run different combinations, and it really depended on the temperature. And it has changed dramatically in just about the last 5 minutes. Being midsummer down here in Mexico, sun's right overhead. And if it's overcast, it's really quite cool. And as soon as the sun breaks through, the temperature absolutely rockets. And, of course, particularly the temperature of this very black top circuit. So that looks like the Benetton guys there ready with their tires, because I believe they're one of the people that are trying experimental race tire setup.
Coming down the backstretch towards you and entering the Peraltada, the most dangerous and exciting, and the drivers tell us challenging turn in all of motor racing. There you see it, 180 degrees, banked about as much as the corners at Indianapolis.
Much tighter, of course, goes to 180 degrees, and they go round there at somewhere. They probably entered at about 135, 140, and exit round about 155 miles.
Now, we're going to do something very special this week. If you'd like to be a Formula One announcer someday, you're going to get a chance to call an entire lap at the start of this Mexican Grand Prix. Once the cars pull into position, David and I will lay out, turn up the volume, and let the sound of these engines rise to a peak of 13,000 RPM, and then launch these 1,000-pound machines down the front straightaway. They arrive at that critical front first corner, a right corner. Always very exciting.
Yep, particularly here, it's a very slow corner at the end of a very fast straight.
Have fun. Turn up the volume. Call your own lap of the Grand Prix. If there's a crash, we'll jump back in, but right now it's all yours. Once the cars are on the grid, we'll get the green light. First a red, then green. Revs come up, and away we'll go. Front stretch they come for the first time, completing one of 69 laps of this race. Patrese on the right, Senna on the left, and Senna sweeps by as they approach the first turn at some 170 miles an hour. Now Gerhard Berger gets by Patrese.
Gerhard Berger really sticking his neck out there at the end of the lap. I don't quite know what happened to him at the start. They kept going to the in-car camera of Alboreto there, which perhaps wasn't quite such a good idea, but so we missed some of this action at the front because Senna did not make a great start. Patrese, on the other hand, did. In fact, he just looked to me like he crept just a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see if they dock him for a minute, like they did Gerhard Berger 2 weeks ago.
Our pictures coming to us from the Mexican Broadcasting Corporation. It is Ayrton Senna, followed by Gerhard Berger, picking them up in the S's now. This is coming out of the stadium section on the back side of the racetrack in the Ciudad Deportiva here in Mexico City, the sports city. It's a large park full of softball fields and soccer fields and racetracks. And right at the center of it, the crown jewel is this 2.747-mile Formula One racetrack.
Nelson Piquet and John Alesi hanging on well there, and way back there is Nigel Mansell. Must have made a very bad start somehow, and his teammate Alain Prost is catching up with that group now.
Both Ferrari drivers got very bad starts. You saw, I believe it was Prost going by the nose of Michele Alboretto's arrows on the in-car camera on that first lap. Down into the Peraltada they come once again.
That looked like Nelson Piquet trying to go around the outside then of one of the Williams cars. It's a fairly brave move as going through the Peraltada. He didn't pull it off, but certainly was thinking about it.
On board with Gerhard Berger. A Formula One car can go from 180 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour in about 100 meters.
Yes, stopping in these cars. We've heard stories that the onboard computer on the Ferrari has been showing lateral Gs of over 4.7 in that Peraltada, and they certainly stop with the same sort of G-force, if not higher.
Entering the stadium section now, Ayrton Senna in his traditional yellow helmet, the yellow of Brazil.
Is that David
One
Brabham?
of the Brabhams. Looks like David Brabham. In only his second Formula One start of the season, or ever for that matter.
Pretty incredible story, really. He's only been driving any sort of wheeled vehicle since 1984 when he started in go-karts. And here he is in 1990, already in Formula One.
Let's get a comment from John in the pit lane.
I don't think they were able to solve the misfire on Gary Brabham. When he came by here on the first couple laps, the misfire was very strong and very loud, and I think that's why he's in the pits now. I'll let you know the exact reason in just a few moments.
I'll correct you there, John. That is David Brabham in the car. Of course, his brother Gary started with the Life Team this year at the first race of the season in Phoenix. Easy to get the two Brabham boys confused, and to confuse their third brother, Jeff, who is well on his way to a third IMSA Sports Car Championship in the States.
Well, the aforementioned Gary came third yesterday at Monza in his Formula 3000 race, so he'll be pretty happy with that. Happier than David is with today. Gerhard Berger under the Goodyear Bridge into turn one, down to second gear, as he follows his teammate Ayrton Senna, who, as usual, has taken the race by the absolute scruff of the neck. This guy, at the moment, is absolutely unsurpassed by any of the other drivers here in Formula One. Gerhard Berger doesn't necessarily think that's so. He thinks that he's beatable, and he is determined to do it before the year's out, and he may well do, but Senna, certainly when he gets the bit between his teeth, he's tough to shake off. Made a bad start, and he's pulled his way into front now.
Banging over the curves as the in-car camera breaks up. It is a problem for the Mexican broadcasters here because we're at about 7,000, maybe 7,200 feet of altitude. The helicopters, off which the signal from these onboard cameras is bounced, can fly at a maximum of 7,600 under the local legislation here. So he's only about 400 feet above the deck, and that makes for a lot of breakup and some missed signals. So we apologize for any problems with that video. There's really nothing they can do about it.
Just in the corner of that picture a moment ago, I saw that Nelson Piquet had managed to work his way around Thierry Boutsen. So Piquet has now moved up into fourth spot.
Field well bunched further back. It is Senna over Berger by just about a second, followed by Thierry Boutsen, Nelson Piquet, Riccardo Patrese, John Alesi, Nigel Mansell, Derek Warwick, Martin Donnelly, and Pierluigi Martini filling out the top 10. A lot of passing going on a little bit further back. The two Lotus.
The two Ferraris there, the number 2 car, Nigel Mansell, winding in John Alesi in the blue and white Tyrrell. And, of course, just 3 cars behind him is his teammate, Alain Prost. There's the two Lotuses side by side. That's Martin Donnelly going around his much more experienced teammate, Derek Warwick. Oh, Derek won't like that much.
I'm sure they'll be talking about that in the Lotus garage, but there's lots of racing still to come. You're watching the Grand Prix of Mexico from Mexico City, round 6 of the World Championship. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're looking at the red number 2 Ferrari of Englishman Nigel Mansell, who put on an electrifying show here in qualifying on Saturday afternoon. The sideways all over the racetrack, still got within a half second of pole. There you see one of the Williams cars. That looks like Thierry Boutsen. There's the
both the Williams cars have been passed by Nelson Piquet, which is pretty outstanding here because at 7,000 feet, all these engines lose about 20% of their horsepower, and one would assume the more powerful engines, i.e. the 10-cylinder Renaults or the 10-cylinder Hondas or the 12-cylinder Ferraris, would be at a distinct advantage over the V8. But there's Nelson Piquet in the Ford engine V8, now lying in third spot just behind the two Honda McLarens.
As you see John Alesi make the corner, it is Senna by 1.3 seconds now, drawing slowly away from teammate Gerhard Berger. Terry Boutsen is in third. Nelson Piquet, well, Piquet is now third, followed by Boutsen, Patrese, Alesi, Nigel Mansell, Derek Warwick, Martin Donnelly. Although we saw Donnelly pass Warwick a little bit earlier, I'm afraid our timing system is a little bit slow right now.
There you see Nigel Mansell going through, this is the stadium complex, coming into turn 6, another second gear right-hander, and he is right on the heels now of John Alesi. John Alesi, of course, driving the spare car, which he's only just got into moments before the start of the race. And according to our John, didn't like the handling on those couple of laps he did to familiarize himself with the car.
Keep in mind, Alesi is making his first start in this Grand Prix of Mexico. By now, we all think of him as an old hand after he's had such electrifying success earlier in the season, and last season, of course, when he began his Formula One career at the Grand Prix of France, which we'll be seeing here on ESPN Live in 2 weeks.
So, in fact, just coming up to his first anniversary in Formula One, and he, again, has certainly taken Formula One by storm somewhat, and very, very big future for him.
Fourth in points, behind Ayrton Senna, who leads teammate Gerhard Berger pretty handily, 31-19 in points. Of course, it's 9 points for first place, 6 for second, 4 for third, 3 for fourth, 2 for fifth, and 1 point for sixth.
Martin Donnelly in the first of those yellow Lotuses behind Nigel Mansell. It'll be interesting to see if he can catch up with Mansell and Alesi. I'm sure that Alesi will tend to slow Nigel up just a little bit, and that may let Martin Donnelly come to grips with the Ferrari. So he'll be excited. That'll be the first time that he's ever been this competitive so far. Nigel Mansell looking like he's tearing off the strip there, off his visor. Prost going around the outside of Derek Warwick there, I think, on the approach to that left-hand corner. He tried that a couple of laps ago and it didn't come off, so we can't see that long picture anymore, but he certainly had a go there. These are those S's I was telling you about. Tricky corners, these. The first ones are slow, and they just gradually speed up all the way through. And essential for the driver to get a good rhythm through these corners. The last two, the right and the left-hander, extremely fast corners, and very important because they lead onto that long back straight before you come into the Peraltada. Second fastest straight in the track here, so it's very important to get it right.
You're on board with Gerhard Berger, who has twice already reset fastest lap of the race. He is now running at 1:20. Make that 3 times. 1:20.882. The lap he just finished is the quickest thus far. About 170 miles an hour and then hard on the brakes. Carbon fiber disc brakes, originally developed on heavy construction equipment, I'm told.
And, of course, aeroplanes use them. They dissipate the heat very quickly, but they do tend to wear out, and these guys have to put new discs on. Look at the lead they've pulled out, and there's Nelson Piquet going extremely well in that Benetton Ford V8 engine car.
The Ford team must be very encouraged by the progress of their V8. There's been lots of rumors that they might go to 10 or 12 cylinders with a Ford in the future. Ford folks here on the Formula One circuit have denied that. They like their V8, and they're doing well with it. That second place in Montreal a week ago, Piquet's best in 3 years.
A great race, too, if you remember. I mean, he really duked it out, absolutely hammered toe-to-toe with both Mansell and Prost, and got them both in the end and had a fine placing there. And he really loves this car. He says you don't have to compromise on the setup. And, of course, here they've done quite a lot of compromises to get the best drag downforce coefficient they possibly can due to the fact the engines are down on power. Dark clouds coming, though. This whole race could change dramatically as the afternoon wears on.
From high above the racetrack, Ayrton Senna flashes across the start-finish line. Now the fast lap leader in the race. It is he by 3.1 seconds as he draws inexorably away from teammate Gerhard Berger. Behind them, Nelson Piquet, 4.9 seconds behind the leader. Then Terry Boutsen, Ricardo Patrese, Nigel Mansell, Jean Alesi, Martin Donnelly, Derek Warwick, and Sandro Nannini filling out the top 10.
Nelson Piquet, the only other man other than Senna to have broken into the 1:20 lap times already. 1 minute 20 seconds, that is. Good going with the V8 round here. Thierry Boutsen's pulling away from Patrese, which is a bit of a surprise. Patrese made a tremendous start. Well, it's not really a surprise. I think that Thierry and Patrese are very evenly matched. But Patrese was right on the front row, made a cracking start, and has gradually dropped back now to 5th spot. He's obviously not got his race set up just as good as he hoped. Now, there's a team who I know are running on slightly harder tyres than the McLaren cars, and that could be that at this early stage, those tyres aren't giving quite the grip of the C compound.
Slowly drawing away, Ayrton Senna in his 100th Formula One start, driving brilliantly in the manner we've become accustomed to watching from the 30-year-old Brazilian. The 88 world champion leads and will Eastern time. Our Tuesday night doubleheader begins with the Giants versus the Reds. The Reds built up a big lead in the National League West early on, but the Giants have come alive, and they're beginning to challenge Cincinnati for the top spot in that division. Then following Giants and the Reds, you'll see the Tigers versus the Athletics from the American League at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, also live. First baseman Cecil Fielder leads the Tigers up against the world champion Oakland Athletics. So it's live baseball, Tuesday night doubleheader here on ESPN, beginning with the National League at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, live June 26th. Back here at the Circuit Hermanos Rodríguez in Mexico City at 7,200 feet above sea level. You're watching Nigel Mansell, who trails Ricardo Patrese by 2.7 seconds for 5th place.
And just behind Patrese is, just behind those two is Alan Prost, who's managed to get around both of the Lotuses. And also, so is Alessandro Nannini in the second Benetton, making great strides. Now then, the sun is out, as you can see from the film. It's very hot, very sunny, and some of these guys could have a problem with their left front tire going away through that Perel Tarda corner if they don't get some relief with in the form of cloud cover.
Recall a year ago when the two McLarens were the class of the field, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. Prost chose to go with soft tires all around. Senna went with harder tires on the left side. Prost had to stop twice for tires and had no chance of stopping Ayrton Senna. One of the Dolares is parked. That's Emanuele Pirro, I believe, with the international for signal for she is kaput.
That was on the main straight here. It sounded as rough as old boots when it went by our commentary position. A bit of smoke wisping out from underneath there. Is that a fire, or is that just hot engine expiring at the side of the road? Marshall's on the safe side, coming with his fire extinguisher. And to pass him is Ayrton Senna. Senna's pulling out nearly a second a lap on Gerhard Berger, who is quicker than him almost every session this weekend. Friday morning, Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. But now when the chips are down, suddenly here we are just a few laps into this race. 11 laps in, he's got nearly an 8-second lead.
Could it be that Ayrton Senna, to go with all of his wonderful driving skills, has now learned the immortal technique of sandbagging up until race day?
Well, it could also be that he has no deal, yet between himself and Ron Dennis for McLaren next year. And they had a bit of a jokey sort of press conference where Ron Dennis said that he didn't like talking about money with friends. And Ayrton Senna soon came back that he liked to improve the team. He improved his driving all the time, and he thought that would also probably include improving his financial status. So I look for dust-up as the season progresses, and this may be one way of saying you get somebody else to drive like that, Ron, and you can pay them what you like.
A fairly massive number we can expect in Ayrton Senna's next
Get what you pay for.
Yeah, but who can afford to pay him besides McLaren? Keep in mind that next week at Silverstone in England, McLaren is also going to be testing their new Honda V12 for the first time that anyone's been able to get a good close look at the next generation of Honda power plants. And maybe that would be enough to tempt Ayrton Senna to stay with McLaren next year.
Pretty depressing for everybody else to know that these guys are going to come along with a 12-cylinder now, isn't it?
Quite. There's a look at the interval. Way back there in the distance is Gerhard Berger, who, as David said, told the press, Senna is good, but he's not as good as you think. Oh, looks like Satoru Nakajima and one of the Lolas is well off the racetrack. Driver not out of the Lola, but moving as Nakajima climbs out.
That was a pity because Nakajima did qualify extremely well.
I believe that's Aguri Suzuki, so the only two Japanese drivers in the history of Formula One have come together, I think. I can't see that helmet real clearly or nor the number on the car. But I believe that may be Aguri Suzuki, who has gone out with teammate Ayrton Senna.
Can you imagine, the Japanese TV coverage with the two Japanese drivers out of the race together?
Yeah, we could switch to their feed.
There'll be a lot of explaining going on the Japanese programs tonight, that's for sure. There's some of that breakup from the onboard camera, which, as Bob's already pointed out, is because the helicopter is unable to get enough height here.
Well, that is Eric Bernard in the other Lola. Could it be that both Lolas are now out of the race within a few seconds of one another? He's up against a fence somewhere.
That's right here, isn't it? It's pretty close.
Well, after big wrecks in Friday and Saturday practice, Suzuki and now... But we've got a pit stop. Sorry, we've got a pit stop, and somebody is thundering. It is Berger thundering onto the pit lane. Johnny's coming your way.
Gerhard Berger has arrived in the pits. They wanted to put oh my gosh, his left front tires are totally shredded. A lot of heat going into those tires, trying to catch his teammate. Gerhard Berger totally destroyed his left front tires, and the way he left his pit lane, he could have destroyed them again. both the left front and the left rear totally blistered. It's not a fault of Goodyear. He was overdriving the car trying to catch his teammate.
Well, of course, we know that that's a team that decided to start on the all-C compound, unless Ayrton Senna was a little bit crafty like he was last year and decided on his own car to go with B's on the left side. The sun has now got in. The clouds have come out. That will probably help Berger, unless he decided to go to the B compound, and then, of course, if it gets too cool, he'll lose too much speed.
The story may run deeper than that because Goodyear also has an A compound here as well. Thus far, none of the teams, to our knowledge, have been using that A compound, the hardest compound Goodyear has here. I wonder if, as you say, Ayrton Senna may have pulled a fast one here. John?
Very quick update on the McLaren Tyrrell situation. The tires that they put on, they put the B compound, that's the harder compound, on the left side of Gerhardt's car, and stuck with the C's on the right hand of Gerhardt's car. And now he's out there driving a car with a compound on one side and the other compound on the other. That itself takes extra talent, but he really cooked those Goodyears on the left-hand side.
Well, there we see Ayrton Senna. His tyres, certainly to us from here, look okay, but that's not a very good way to tell, but they certainly look okay from here.
Emanuele Pirro on his way back to the Dallara pit. And with that, we have 3 cars quickly out of the race. Both he, Aguri Suzuki, and Eric Bernard are out. We'll return to Mexico.
Well, obviously always watching my brother, but NASCAR racing. You know, we get every NASCAR race live in home now, and that's kind of good. You know, I like watching that, and I've got a bit of a fan there with that Dale Earnhardt. He's sort of, he seems a bit of a tough character, and I like him.
In the break between Montreal and Mexico, I went to Detroit to watch the Detroit Formula IndyCar race, and I enjoyed very much.
I follow most of the types of racing, and especially maybe I would say Indy cars, because they're close to Formula One. They're very good cars, very quick cars as well, and it's a different kind of Formula One racing, and it's very interesting to see what's going on there.
I follow Group C. I follow CART because I have some friends there like Fabi, Chiver, and so I follow all the other, let's say, top class motor racing.
Yes, I like to watch in USA stock cars and bikes.
Don't forget, you too can ask a driver a question. Just send us your question for a Formula One driver to Ask the Driver, Post Office Box 309, Crestwood, Kentucky 40014. And while we're on the subject, please do not send us things to give to drivers or for Ask drivers to respond to. We're really not in a position to do that. Response to our Ask a Driver segment has been spectacular. Keep sending those questions on in. We'll ask them of the drivers, and you'll hear their answers on a future Formula One event here on ESPN.
There you see the 2 V10 McLaren, Williams, being followed very closely by Nigel Mansell, the number 2 Ferrari, and right behind him, Alan Prost, who's really on the rampage here this afternoon.
Nigel Mansell has reset fast lap. It's being bounced around like a volleyball at this point. Alain Prost presently runs 6th. He has come from 13th to 6th in just 16 laps, so he has really got the Ferrari working.
And nobody significant in front of him dropped out. Those cars that we see out of the race weren't in front of him, so he's really just passed everybody. Senna, meanwhile, has a 14-second gap and holding over Nelson Piquet. So Nelson Piquet, so far, pretty happy with the way this afternoon's panned out.
There you see Gerhard Berger, who is back on the track now, running in 12th position. Your leader is Ayrton Senna with 17 laps complete of 69 planned. There you're on board with Gerhard Berger. Let's listen to the sounds of the engine as he tries to make up ground. Nigel Mansell in the Ferrari on the backside of the stadium complex. There is Terry Boutsen getting a wheel up onto the curbs, followed by Riccardo Patrese and both Ferraris now.
Prost is obviously making ground up very fast on his teammate Nigel Mansell, which is going to put Mansell in a bit of a sticky position here. He's going to have to make a decision whether to let Prost through or not. Prost didn't have a very good weekend at all up until now, but as usual, he has this uncanny ability to really make the race itself count for so much.
There's the part of the racetrack where Suzuki and Bernard, the Lola teammates, took each other out of the race. Here come the Ferraris. Nigel Mansell, followed by Alain Prost.
Now we're led to believe that all these cars, the two Ferraris, have got the C compound, that's the slightly softer one, and that the Williams have got the B compound. But, of course, a lot of those sort of decisions are made very close to the beginning of this race, and we could be somewhat out on that.
If you're just joining us, as John reported around lap 12, Gerhard Berger pitted with the left side tires on his McLaren totally torn to shreds. He's back out there now and doing a very Canada-like charge through the field right now. But our eyes are on the two red Ferraris. Bit of dodging going on there between Patrese and Mansell. And Mansell will look to the inside.
Some of that dodging about on this straight here is that they're trying to avoid the bumps, apart from anything else. But in their case, it wasn't. I mean, he's trying to shake him off. But look at Prost, right? This is where he's quick. He's very quick to those first few corners, Prost. Because this is where he overtook both Lotuses and thought about having a go at his teammate there. He's just got turns 1, 2, and 3 really off to finesse. Now that's where he's going to have to make up as much time as he possibly can down the straight, get right with his teammate going into turn 1, and make up the ground coming into turn 1 and nail him going into turn 4.
This is the battle for 5th place on the racetrack. There is Mansell, who has it. Behind him is Prost, who wants it. It is Senna by 13 seconds over Nelson Piquet, running second as he did in Montreal 2 weeks ago. Terry Boutsen follows, 2 seconds behind Piquet. Patrese 2 seconds behind his teammate, followed by the battle here between Mansell and Prost, with Patrese in the blue and white car leading.
And it's significant that Nelson Piquet has in fact pulled a second back off the lead that Ayrton Senna had on him before.
Could it be that the McLaren's tires are going away as his teammate Gerhard Berger's did? Now Prost drops back a few car lengths. Nigel Mansell closes up on Patrese. Looks to the left. Oh, I think you're right. I think he's dodging bumps, David. So the battle continues between the 4th, 5th, and 6th place machines here on the circuit Hermanos Rodríguez in Mexico City. It's a beautiful afternoon, and we'll be back in a moment. In the books, following the conclusion of this Mexican Grand Prix, our next stop will be the beginning of the Continental season. The Formula One Grand Prix of France, coming your way Sunday, July 8th at 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time. 7:50, 10 minutes before the hour, so that we can bring you up to date on all the Formula One news before we turn them loose on the circuit Paul Ricard, which has been repaved for this year's French Grand Prix. Hope you'll be with us. On the racetrack, Ricardo Patrese in the blue and yellow Williams leads Nigel Mansell in the red Ferrari.
Now, just around the back tire, around Patrese's left rear tire, there's an ominous-looking black line appearing. If we get another close-up look at the tire, just look at his left rear tire and see if you can see what I think I can see. Patrese using a lot of road there.
And why not with that big Ferrari right in his mirrors? Let's get a quick comment from John.
Well, there's one member of the Benetton team who hasn't seen his driver in second place since the green light went on, and that's Jim Coates from the Ford engineering staff. He has been staring at the telemetry coming in on the Ford computers. This information can actually be radioed to Nelson Piquet in the car, and he can make minor engine adjustments to make it perfectly on song for the heat and temperatures and altitude that he's dealing with for the moment. Telemetry has become an absolute necessity to winning and doing well in the Grand Prix World Championship Tour. Let's hope that we won't have to do an awful lot of changing on that engine, because it seems to be running extremely well now. We'll also try and get an update on his tires.
There you see Ricardo Patrese still looking for that line. His left rear does have an ominous black strip to the inboard side of that left rear.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was to start with, but
Terry Boutsen
inside
Larini, I believe.
Is that Larini or Philippe Allier? One of the two Ligiers.
Terry Boutsen is a man with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder this weekend. He is driving very hard. The pit lane rumor, as we said at the top of the show, is that young Jean Alesi has already signed with Frank Williams for the 1991 season. And the man who will no doubt be out, if you take a look at Nigel Mansell, has gotten by Patrese, and Prost took a look at it.
And they keep on moving the camera just when the action's going. They didn't get around him anyway, because there's Patrese still on the road. Lucky to have all four wheels on the car by the look of things.
To finish my thought that Terry Boutsen might be out, he was somewhat uncomplimentary to his team in practice and qualifying this weekend, saying they should have brought softer springs for these bumps. They didn't, and he said, I am very upset. Might be just another volley fired.
Well, I think he's taking the offense is the best form of defense, because I think the team had a bit of a go at him about his very unwise move around Alain Prost on the wet line, or what was left of the wet line, at Montreal 2 weeks ago. So, yes, I think we're seeing the first initial sparrings here of a driver change.
Got a quick look there at Sandro Nannini. There is Alain Prost with another, that's Nigel Mansell with a Ligier in front of him.
Now, this car's a lap down, of course, not on the lead lap. He's putting him away for a lap. And now Nigel Mansell is setting up in hot pursuit of Thierry Boots and Patrese, using those same blocking tactics to keep Alain Prost at bay. Alain Prost will be very anxious to get around him so as not to let Nigel Mansell get too far in front of him.
I don't think we can overstate the problems the teams have had in setting up here in Mexico. Right now it's bright sunshine, temperature probably in excess of 80 degrees out there on the backside. And here's Prost underneath Patrese. No! Ooh, Patrese closed the door pretty significantly there.
But that's the same place where Alain Prost is trying to get all his victims. He's very quick through that complex before that. Now he's right with Patrese through here, though. Maybe he can hang on here and get him going into the Peraltada. It's essential if you want to try and pass somebody to maintain absolutely as close contact as possible. Seems fairly logical thing to say, but it's sometimes you lose sight of it when you're racing with someone.
22 laps complete. We're nearly a third of the way through the 13th running of the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico. Senna leads now by 14 seconds, 2 seconds back over Piquet. 2 seconds back is Thierry Boutsen. And then this battle between, then Nigel Mansell, then this battle. Now Prost looks to the inside, but he won't pass going into this corner. The Peraltada, which is Spanish for bank. Onto the front stretch. Recall 1987 when Derek Warwick with the Arrows team had a huge wreck when he went off the Peraltada. Very similar to what happened to Eric Bernard in his LaRousse yesterday. There's Nigel Mansell.
They're about to get mixed up in some more lap traffic. That's one of the Monteverdi Onyx cars just behind Nigel.
He took a long look at his left side mirrors as well. Between the altitude and the changing weather conditions and a track surface that is not often used here in the Ciudad Deportiva in Mexico City, it is a very dusty racetrack, and the drivers have really been earning their money trying to get these race cars set up. Balance has been a particular problem. A lot of understeer at the front end, tires coming and going, not knowing which compound will work well, and a very limited amount of time available to them. They get an hour and a half of practice each morning and 1 hour of qualifying timed each afternoon.
And of course these bumpy tracks are hard to set the car up for as well, especially when you're trying to get away with as little downforce as you possibly can because of the lack of power. Of course you've also got less drag because the air is thinner, so you get 20% less of pretty well everything. But they're trying, a lot of the cars are running a low wing configuration here to try and maintain speed down the straight, because really it is the only place to actually make a pass on anybody.
Coming at you down the pit straightaway, the front side of the racetrack here in Mexico City. Now this is Mansell coming around Thierry Boutsen, going to pass him on the outside going into turn 1.
Now that was a slick move.
Boy, Nigel Mansell really and truly has the bit between his teeth. He is just climbing through this field.
Thierry tried to block him, went to the inside of the corner, and Nigel just went right around the outside.
Because they may have going to do that. It's this one. This is the part of the racetrack where he had the car sideways twice in qualifying yesterday and still got within a half second of the pole.
Yeah, for sure, if he hadn't done that, I think it would have been... And so many drivers come in and say, oh, well, I got balked, or this, or that happened. But we actually saw it right here on the video, and there's no doubt about it. It cost him half a second.
Here they come. The S-turns gradually open out. They get longer and faster. That last one taken at 5th gear, then onto the backstretch where they grab 6th. Comes Sandro Nannini in the Benetton.
He's also catching up. That's really a place, fight for place. That's just how far he is behind Alain Prost. So he has made a lot of ground up, while Prost and Patrese have been fighting off this Des Oliver Gruyard.
Meanwhile, Ayrton Senna continues to draw away as Nigel Mansell cruises around the Osella and puts Olivier Briard between himself and Thierry Boutsen. It is Senna by 17.1 seconds over Piquet, followed by Nigel Mansell, Thierry Boutsen, Ricardo Patrese, and Alain Prost. And you see Prost has now taken Ricardo Patrese. So the Ferraris are moving forward, putting the Williams cars further back. We'll take a quick time out and return to our coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Mexico after this. Grand Prix of Mexico. Bob Barsha, David Hobbs with you, John Bizignano patrolling the pits. And we have had a tremendous battle up front. There you see Riccardo Patrese in the Williams car. They've been getting the short end of it. They have been passed by the Ferraris, and now moving up quickly is Sandro Nannini in the Benetton.
He's about to be put down by, by Sandro Nannini.
Through the S's they come. Your leader is Ayrton Senna by 16.5 seconds now over Nelson Piquet with 26 laps of 69 complete. Nigel Mansell runs in third, followed by Terry Boutsen, Alain Prost, Riccardo Patrese, Sandro Nannini, Jean Alesi, Martin Donnelly, and Derek Warwick fill out the top 10.
I must say that if I'd been asked to put money on this, I would have thought the Williams cars would have done extremely well in the race this afternoon, because they showed more consistent flashes of brilliance through practice and qualifying than pretty well anybody else. And I thought that they would be a real threat in the race. And out of the 6 front runners, they seem to be, as you said, getting the short end of the stick somewhat. Ooh.
Boutsen trying to get underneath one of the lap Ligers. Right behind him is Alain Prost. Here comes Riccardo Patrese with Sandro Nannini hot on his rear wing. Wings are another subject of discussion among the teams. Some of them using very flat rear wings, minimum downforce for high speeds. And once again, Patrese having trouble with the Ligier. The teams that have a lot of horsepower are standing those rear wings up, hoping to get every last bit of downforce and higher cornering speeds as a result.
And the other funny thing is here that teams have tried the high wing setup, the low wing setup, and turned in almost exactly identical times with 2 team cars. So everybody's sort of scratching their head and thinking, well, which is really the best way to go? If you don't have enough wing, if the car slides around, that, of course, puts temperature in the tires. It's the sort of thing that may well have happened to Gerhard Berger.
You've already heard the top 10. Let me update the next 10. Following Derek Warwick is Gerhard Berger in 11th place. Behind him, Stefano Modena, Pierluigi Martini, Andrea De Cesaris, Michele Alboreto, Paolo Barilla, Gregor Wojtek, and Philippe Ayot. Senna's lead now 14.9 seconds up front. Nannini continues to close in.
Mansell just 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds behind Nelson Piquet. It'll be interesting to see if he can make any ground. There's Gerhard Berger coming out onto the main straight in that terrific corner, up in the 6th gear. Changing gear in the race to about 13,500 RPM. And peaking out at about the same in 6th down here. And that in front of him, of course, is Derek Warwick, I believe. Was in front of him. He's now behind him.
And there's one of the Ligers dead ahead. Notice the rear view mirror right there in the center lower part of the screen. You can read his sponsored decal on the chin of his helmet straight forward. That means, of course, that it is mounted backward on the helmet. You're dealing with some real high-tech public relations here in Formula One. Who would think to mount a decal backwards so that in the rear view mirror it would work front ways?
Whoa! Puts the wheel on the curb there, upsets the car just a little bit, into turn 6. Down to 2nd. Stays in 2nd, up to 3rd for this left-hander. Stays in 3rd through here, then he's going to take 4th in just a moment.
And not drawing up on the Ligier.
No, not at all. But you can see there just how these cars bounce around. Just look at his head. Very, very bumpy here at Mexico.
Out the back straight. And down to the Peraltada. In the background there is the basketball arena from the 1968 Olympic Games here in Mexico City. Onto the front stretch. Crowded grandstands, despite the World Cup soccer tournament being on TV all over Mexico. Every hotel has at least 6 televisions in the lobby. A crowd of some 100,000 on hand here in Mexico City. Now Gerhard Berger closes up on the Ligier and slides around in the first corner.
I think that was Nicola Larini in the number 25 car. But he didn't make any ground on him in these in the twisty bits. This is where he caught up with him first, just coming out of turn 2 there. And it'll be interesting to see if Larini, in fact, can just hold on to him through all these twisty bits. He really made all his time up on the straight.
2 Lotuses coming up behind Larini to lap him as well.
Now, of course, to get where he is, Gerhard Berger has passed both those Lotuses. He came out behind them after that pit stop. So he again is on the move. Up to 8th now.
9th, I believe, as our electronic timing and scoring system revamps its page. You see Gerhard Berger from above. He says he is much more comfortable in this car now. If you've been with us throughout the season, Gerhard Berger has been very vocal about the fact that the McLaren is too small for him. It's perfect for a guy like Alain Prost, who stands about 5'3". Berger is much closer to 6 feet, and he petitioned the FIA, the sanctioning body of Formula One worldwide, to insist that cars be of a certain dimension so that tall drivers still have a future in the sport.
Both Williams cars. The Ferrari went round the Williams there, and yet again the camera went off it onto this shot here. But it looks as if Nigel Mansell got around Thierry Boutsen. Yes, he did.
And now Riccardo Patrese comes under fire from Alessandro Nannini. So Senna is your leader by 14.5 seconds over Piquet. Mansell now third, 2 seconds behind Piquet, followed by Terry Boutsen, Alain Prost, Riccardo Patrese, and Sandro Nannini. That's the way they'll stay as we take a quick timeout. Lots of action still to come your way from the Grand Prix of Mexico. We're not yet at halfway. 13th at the start of this race. Sandro Nannini has also gotten around Riccardo Patrese. He is now in the final points-paying position, 6th.
Both these guys driving a tremendous race. I think I said just before we went to break there that it was Mansell overtaking Boutsen. Of course, it was not. He'd already done that some laps before. It was Alain Prost right here who got Boutsen at the end of the straight.
35-year-old all-time leader in Formula One victories with 40. Born in Saint-Chamond, France. By far and away the leader in points earned in Formula One racing. Picked up his first points in his very first Grand Prix event. Now you're aboard again with Gerhard Berger. Seems like he's been spending a lot of his time behind blue race cars today.
It does, and in fact the next car in front of him in the point scoring position is in fact another blue car, which is Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell. That's not him in front now. That I think is another one of the Ligiers. Most probably Phil Alliot, is it? Those cars, those Ligiers, are obviously very quick through that Peraltada. But come this long straight, the extra power that V10 Honda tells as he makes up a lot of ground.
It is in fact Alliot. Just blows by.
Pretty depressing. So many drivers say, well, I'm just as quick through the corners as he is. They get me on the straight, and the old answer is, yeah. Well, you just come onto the straight slow. But he didn't. He came on the straight pretty damn quick out of that Peraltada.
And that's bad news for the rest of the year, too, because they've got a lot of very fast racetracks coming up. We go to Paul Ricard. After that, the Grand Prix of Great Britain in Silverstone. And then it's on to Germany. A lot of long, very fast racetracks where the V10 and V12 engines ought to run away. This is perhaps the only racetrack we have seen in Formula One where the new normally aspirated era has not surpassed the turbocharged cars. Of course, in the very thin air of Mexico City, a turbocharger can make up for a lot of that lack of compression in the cylinders. And as a result, the qualifying record of 1:16.9 set by Ayrton Senna in a Lotus back in 1986 still stands, as does the race record thus far of 1:18.608 set by Alain Prost in the McLaren Honda Turbo 2 years ago.
Getting closer, but as you say, this is the only circuit left where they haven't managed to easily surpass their turbo. There you see the difference between Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet is down to just 0.3 of a second. Really catching up. I would think it's only a matter of time before Nelson Piquet is demoted to third. There's our leader, Ayrton Senna, with a 16.5-second lead now.
It goes underneath the Brabham of David Brabham. Senna absolutely in control of this race with 34 of 69 laps complete. 16.485 seconds. His lead over the second place Benetton Ford of Nelson Piquet.
Well, it certainly looks as if he chose the right tyre setup. If he hasn't had problems yet, he probably won't have problems. They look all right there. And there you see that race. But second spot, Nigel Mansell, the red Ferrari number 2, and right in front of him is the Benetton, the many-coloured car of Benetton, driven by Nelson Piquet. And what a poke in the eye he's given so many of his critics who over the last 2 years have been saying, oh, he's absolutely finished, he's had it, he's no good. And boy, this year since he's been driving the car that he wanted to drive, he has shown some of that old fire. You don't become 3-time world champion and then just suddenly fade away to nothing.
Piquet flew here from Europe in his jet with Jean Alesi. He has also bought himself a stunt plane, so Nelson Piquet will soon be doing loop-de-loops. Right now, he's got mirrors full of another prominent pilot on the Formula One circuit, Nigel Mansell, who flies both his own jet and his own helicopter.
It's a different world.
I'll have to take your word for it. Nannini now being closed in on by Mansell. And again, it's another case of V8 versus V12. You would expect Mansell in the Ferrari to be able to close up dramatically on the straightaways. Hasn't happened yet, but it may soon, and we won't let you miss it. We'll return to Mexico in a moment. Nigel Mansell has just gone by Nelson Piquet. As we suspected, the V12 of that Ferrari was right there on the straightaway and under braking going into turn 1, the Solana curve here in Mexico City. Nigel Mansell took over second place in this race behind Ayrton Senna.
A very unequal struggle on this long straight here, especially at this altitude. The multi-cylinder engines, and by that I mean 10s and 12-cylinder engines. He just absolutely wound poor old Nelson Piquet in on the straight. Piquet giving absolutely as good as he's getting on all these twisty bits, but just has not got the power to hold on to that Ferrari. And Piquet, I might add, is running a lot less wing than he would probably like to do as well.
The V8 cars have been pretty much put in that situation. Since they don't have power to match the V10s and V12s, they've had to run a lot less wing. There's a good example. See all the black on that rear wing of Nigel Mansell? And the green on the Benetton just behind him, a much narrower band. It's much flatter. And now the stands on the front straightaway come to their feet as they see Nigel Mansell has gone by Nelson Piquet.
So now Nigel Mansell's in second, and he is nearly 18 seconds behind Ayrton Senna. Piquet is just half a second behind him, and Alan Prost is 6 seconds further back.
Terry Boutsen going around Michele Alboreto in the arrows. We haven't seen much of our in-car cameras, no doubt due to the fact that the helicopter has to fly so low here in Mexico City. We did expect rain, but the clouds have broken here and there. We're getting some blue sky and a lot of sun, and I'm sure that has certainly got some of the engineers on these teams biting their fingernails.
Nannini anxious to take away that spot from Thierry Boutsen. They're racing for 5th. Thierry's in 5th, Nannini's in 6th, and Nannini is bound and determined to have that place away from Thierry Boutsen. Nannini has come up from 20th on the grid. What a tremendous run he's had.
Sandro Nannini,
20th.
one of the few Formula One drivers who actually smokes. You don't often see that. And also one of the few drivers who didn't come up through the traditional open wheel formula. Formula 2, Formula 3, Formula 3000. He came up and got his start in racing as a rally driver. Also drove sports cars for a number of years. We're approaching halfway as you watch the battle between Terry Boutsen and Sandro Nannini for 5th place. With 38 laps complete of 69 planned, Ayrton Senna leads by 17.9 seconds over Nigel Mansell. Nelson Piquet now 1.3 seconds behind Mansell. Alain Prost 4.8 seconds behind Piquet, followed by the battle you're watching between Boutsen and Nannini.
As usual, I exaggerated. He didn't come from 20th. He came from 14th, but still.
Hey, I was going to back you up, buddy. I was going to be right there the whole way.
A pretty good climb to the field for a V8 engine car. Both he and Prost have done. I thought Prost and would be having a struggle this afternoon, starting so far down in 13th. The lowest he started for years, but certainly he's making the best of his Ferrari engine this afternoon. Nannini now trapped behind Boutsen and not being able to make much impression. It's going to be difficult for him to pass. That's the big difference with the more powerful. It's so much easier for the more powerful cars to actually make the pass. And if you're underpowered, I mean, you have to make everything really click right into place and nail them right at the end of the straight or somewhere where you're going to be able to stay. And you not only got to pass them, you've got to pass them so that you can stay in front. Otherwise, the next time you come to a bit of a straight, they just whistle right by you again.
So you can't just brake to a near stop, just outbrake him and then try and get going again.
No, because as soon as you want to get going again, he's going to get going quicker than you are.
Terry Boutsen of Belgium. We've already mentioned that Jean Alesi, as you take a look there at Alain Prost, wearing the number 1 on his Ferrari, and ahead of him is Nelson Piquet. Prost presently running in 4th position. We mentioned the rumor that Jean Alesi was going to the Williams team. That persistent rumor that Al Unser Jr. may come and run a Formula One car sometime in the near future has continued here in Mexico.
Al, of course, has made it very clear that whatever he does in Formula One, he absolutely must stay to do the Indy 500, which is going to make it difficult for any of these top Formula One teams to have him on board if he wants to miss some of the month of May to go off to do Indy.
Alain Prost has just reset fast lap at 118.879 seconds. Let's get a comment from John down in the pit lane.
Well, there's nothing more that we'd like to see Al Unser Jr. in Formula One. Of course, we're looking for talented Americans to come into this international motor racing scene. We talked to Frank Williams. He said that they would like to test little Al sometime this summer. But it would be a problem, as you said, David, if he insists on doing the Indy 500, which we can understand. that is definitely a conflict for Frank Williams. But we hope to get a test result out of Little Al with the Williams team sometime this summer.
And that would be interesting. It'd be great to see a young IndyCar driver get into a Formula One car and show them what they can do. Back on board with Gerhard Berger, presently shown in 9th position.
Must be Riccardo Patrese that he's going by on the entry to the Peraltada.
Now listen to this car as it gets onto the front straight, climbs to high RPM and stays there. Just listen to the sound of this V10. And meanwhile, Berger has got problems out the back of his mirror as he goes around one of the Williams.
I think that's Riccardo Patrese, who in fact has caught up and repassed.
Has passed.
So now Gerhard Berger is in 8th spot. So not too far to go, and he'll be back in the points. Boy, shades of Montreal all over again. He must be beginning to think, crikey, can't I ever get in the car, get in the front and stay there?
And everybody can pat you on the back afterwards, but I'm sure Gerhard Berger would tell you what he wants is the points. He wants to win. He doesn't want to come from the back and be the fastest guy on the track.
Paolo Barilla there in the second of the Minardi cars in front of him with the black helmet. Paolo Barilla is a very, very good driver, but I don't think he's quite up to Formula One standards. And there's another rumor going around that Nannini will replace him next year when those Minardis get the Ferrari engine. And the way those chassis go, they could be a pretty strong threat for the Ferrari engine. I'll probably stick with their Pirelli tires. And Nannini is rumored to be going there to join, of course,
Pierluigi Martini.
Pierluigi Martini.
And, of course, Minardi is where Sandro Nannini began his Formula One career just a few short years ago. And as Gerhard Berger closes in and passes Pierluigi Martini with the power of his Honda V10, we'll take a quick timeout. Plenty more still to come. We're just past Riccardo Patrese into the pits and out in a Formula One, well, fairly slow Formula One stop, 9.19 seconds. His tires going away as well, and that will cost Riccardo Patrese. He was just passed by Alain Prost before he made that stop. Let's get down to John from the pits.
They very quickly wheeled the tires into the garage. Lee Gogg is inspecting them now. They are not blistered, but they certainly are a bit worn. The tires, I can see the wear marks on them. There is some tire left, but obviously the Italian Riccardo Patrese did not like the handling. A little bit of blistering right here along the outside edge of the left front. This is what the blister looks like. This is caused by heat coming up through the tire. He was driving very hard, losing time. He did not like the handling on the car. It was faster to come in and get rid of these than a brand new set back on, which is exactly what they've done.
And Riccardo Patrese back on the racetrack. Lee Gogg, incidentally, is Goodyear's Director of International Racing Programs.
Perhaps we could get John to ask Lee Gogg while they're both standing here, were those Bs or were those Cs? Because I was under the impression that the Williams cars were going to go on the Bs, which were reckoned to be the safer bet.
42 laps complete of 69 planned. As you take a look at Gerhard Berger, who continues to move through the field. He is in 8th position right now. Your leader is Ayrton Senna. 18 seconds back is Nigel Mansell. 24 seconds back is Alain Prost, as Ferraris now run 2nd and 3rd. Nelson Piquet, another second behind Prost. Sandro Nannini runs 5th. Terry Boutsen 6th. John Alesi 7th. Gerhard Berger 8th. Martin Donnelly 9th. And Derek Warwick 10th. Berger stopped very early, about 12 laps into this race, after absolutely running the tires off the left side of his car.
Berger's about 8 seconds behind Alesi, who in fact is 4 seconds behind Thierry Boutsen.
Okay, let's get an answer from John about what tires came off that car. John?
David, the great cooperation from Goodyear. They told me with no hesitation whatsoever that Patrese tires that came off were the B compound. So if you're having trouble with the B compound, then some other people are going to be visiting these pits very soon. But he put C's back on. We're past the halfway point, very light fuel. They went back with the C's.
And of course, one of the problems, as Lee has pointed out before, and as I've obviously found to my cost, if you have a harder compound tire, which has obviously got better potential wear, there we see Nelson Piquet coming and change his tires as well.
Piquet, who came in while running in 4th position.
It could be that some of these people who had Bs on have decided to go to Cs. Now the race is running its way. As John says, the fuel load has gone down, the cars are lighter, and they could probably make these tires last to the end. Look at that blistering there.
Blistering has gone on all day. It is still very warm. No sign of rain, although we have a lot of towering clouds around. Let's hear more from John about tires.
The very small rear wing on the Benetton allows the rear tires to actually skid. The car skidding back and forth and a lot of wheel spin. On his particular car, Nelson Piquet's that is, they blistered the rears, the heat coming up through the compound and literally just blowing off that rubber. Again, it's not a fault of Goodyear, it's just driving the car very hard, trying to keep as much speed down these long straightaways. We're going to have a lot of business down here, guys. Get ready for some pit action.
Ricardo Patrese rejoined in 11th position. He is the last of the cars on the lead lap at this point. And Nelson Piquet has rejoined in 8th, some 52 seconds down to the leader, Ayrton Senna. What we need right now is a Senna pit stop.
We certainly do. That's not what he needs.
There you see Nelson Piquet, the 3-time world champion, with the 2 Lotus cars who have been running in lockstep throughout this race. Martin Donnelly presently leading his teammate, Derek Warwick.
He passed him fairly early on. Now, I know that Derek Warwick was one of these guys that had a mixed set on his car right from the word go. Had a left front, a B left front.
There's Gerhard Berger making his way around. He is now up into 7th position following Piquet's stop. You're on board with the race leader, Ayrton Senna. Let's listen to the sound and keep your eye on that tire on the right front corner for look for signs of wear.
When he passed that guy going to turn 1, you can see just how little time there is when people at home say, well, why on earth did he overtake him there? He knew he was going to turn in and took his front wheel off. Why didn't he wait? But you can see then just how quickly these things happen. The guy made room for him, he stayed out, but it would have only taken a split second for that guy to move in, and it would have had his wheels off.
There you see the gap from first to second has come down to 13.8 seconds. That raises the question whether our leader, Ayrton Senna, is beginning to have tire problems. The McLarens have been carrying a great deal of wing because of the power of their Honda engines. They can gather up some of the downforce lost to the 7,000-foot altitude of Mexico City.
And, of course, the more wing, generally speaking, the better your tire wear. And there's Ricardo Patrese in front of him, who he's about to put a lap down after Patrese's tire stop.
Senna, Mansell, Prost, Nannini, Boutsen, Alesi, Berger, Piquet, Donnelly, and Warwick are your top 10. Once again, on board with Senna. With Ayrton Senna seeking his 24th Grand Prix victory, which would tie him with Juan Manuel Fangio, the 5-time world champion from the 50s, for 5th on the all-time record book. We'll be back to Mexico. Look at the young Frenchman who began his Formula One career at age 30. He's really had his hands full with that Osella today. There you see the gap is coming down further. Just 12.2 seconds separates race leader Ayrton Senna from Nigel Mansell coming up fast in the Ferrari. And also moving up quickly, Alain Prost has reset fast lap at 1:18.772. Prost now just 4.2 seconds behind Mansell. And 18 seconds behind Senna. Excuse me, David.
The McLaren team really are ready for Senna to come in. They've got the pit man out there with the board, so expect him to come in on this lap. Now, of course, that begs the question, will Nigel Mansell have to come in as well?
And this will be a great race if Mansell doesn't, because Senna will have to get that McLaren stop, make the tire change, which for the McLaren boys means about 7 seconds, then get back up to speed before Nigel Mansell, ripping along just 13 seconds behind him, can come by. This could be the critical moment of the race. Senna does not pit. Not this lap. Here comes Alain Prost. 18 seconds behind Senna. If the Ferraris can do it without pitting, it could be the boost that they need to get past Senna.
Prost significantly is winding in his teammate quite effectively. He was 8 seconds behind just a few laps ago. Now he's only 4 seconds behind.
Looks like Philippe Ayot's Ligier lying ahead, as does Nicola Laurini's. There's Mansell going out the bottom of the picture. There is the Ligier. That's Ayot, who won his first points here in 1986 with the Ligier team. There is Prost.
Two Frenchmen together on the track. Prost easily just blowing by his team countryman. Now then, is that a black line I see around Prost tyre there? No, not really. Maybe it is on the outside of the left front there. Look,
yeah,
quite clear. Quite clear. That is a line of blisters.
Let's get a comment from John quickly.
Happening in the McLaren pits. They have put the covers back on the tires. They were all ready for one of their magic 7-second stops. 16 people out here ready to change 4 tires. The tire blankets are back on the tires, and they're trying to figure out which is the best way to go. Is there enough time for them to stay out on the track and not lose his lead? I understand that he's lapping about a 1.5 seconds slower per lap from the second place person. They're trying to calculate that up in the McLaren management right now. What's the best way to go?
There you see Nigel Mansell. How those tires look, David?
Well, hard to tell. They won't stay close for a long time. They don't look too bad. Yes, that's got a line on his left front too, on the outside of the left front.
An identical line, although Prost looks worse right now. You can see that distinctive stripe around the outside shoulder of the tire.
And that left front tire does take a hammering around that Peraltada, and a number of other corners here as well. It's not just the one corner, but that certainly is the one that really, really loads them up.
As you watch Alain Prost, cars out of the race at this point. J.J. Leto in the Onyx, Emanuele Pirro, Satoru Nakajima, Aguri Suzuki, Eric Bernard, and David Brabham are now out.
Olivier Grouillard in front of another Frenchman.
Lap 50 of 69 is now complete. 19 laps to go. Nigel Mansell just 11.4 seconds behind our leader Senna, but right now he's got lap traffic in front of him in the person of Olivier Grouillard,
which has given Prost a bit of a chance to catch up with Nigel.
Nigel gave him a quick look, and I was waiting for that. Mansell waved his fist as he did 2 weeks ago in Montreal. He gave someone else a fist.
Having shaken hands with Nigel Mansell quite a few times this year, when you see him, I wouldn't want to receive a fist from old Nigel. His arms are just like my legs. They are incredible. Does a lot of working out. If you're going to drive these cars at this sort of speed, you have to.
Nigel was, in fact, which may account for his great golf game. Very strong wrist. Nigel is as good a golfer as you'll find in motor racing.
As good a golfer as you find most places.
Plays to about a 1 or a 2 handicap, as I recall. And now the teammates are nose to tail. Mansell with Prost right there. Both tires showing wear. Both cars may be in tire trouble, but they have but 18 laps remaining here in Mexico. And they are holding down second and third place.
Now then, 18 laps is a long way to go if the tires are blistering, but as we've already said, the fuel load is going down. The temperature could be going down. I mean, what these guys need more than oxygen at the moment is a bit of cloud cover.
There goes Alain Prost, the only French world champion and only the 6th French driver to drive for Ferrari over the years. We'll take a quick timeout and resume with this Ferrari battle in Mexico after this. It's the gap from second place Nigel Mansell up to the leader Ayrton Senna. There you see Mansell, but behind him his teammate Alain Prost appears to be having even more trouble with his tires.
Coming up to pass Stefano Modena and Brabham. Unfortunately, he couldn't quite get him before they got to that turn 6. Now he's going to have to follow him through this complex.
In fact, he waved to Modena, telling him which way he wanted to come around. There is Prost. Take a close look at his tires, particularly that left front. Our right, as we look head-on on the car. The driver's left is showing another line of blisters, this time down the inside shoulder. Mansell goes underneath and completes the pass of the Brabham into the Peraltada. Not a place you want to go with blistered tires. Behind him, Prost also takes Modena. 53 laps complete of 69 scheduled. Down into the Solana corner, named for most Jose Solana, a great Mexican driver of some decades ago.
The lead now down to 9.5 seconds. Now we're watching their tyres, but of course all these pits have monitors, so all the engineers are watching their tyres, and of course they're all talking to Ayrton Senna, who's watching his tyres. They're watching his tyres. The Ferrari engineers are watching his tyres, so everybody's watching everybody else. And at this stage, I don't think anybody's going to stop until somebody makes a stop.
Keep in mind that Ayrton Senna, our leader, has shown great ability over the last season in slowing down and winning by just the amount necessary. He said after the Monaco race, when he won by 1 second after leading by as much as 12, I won by 1 second. That's all I needed to win by. And that may be the case right now as Nigel Mansell continues to close in. Let's hear from John in the pit lane.
David, I think you're absolutely right. They are trying to fool each other all up and down the pit lane here. Management is telling their mechanics to go ahead and undo the tire blankets, put them back on, change tires, so that everyone does not give out any false indications of what they really want to do. We've seen every top team. We've seen McLaren, Williams, Ferrari, Benetton, all playing this waiting game and trying to fool one another into what they really want to do.
When you get back in, John, Alain Prost has gone by his teammate Nigel Mansell. Prost moves into second place.
But again, that uncanny skill that he's got for racecraft and race strategy as they came to lap those two cars, Wojtek in the Onyx and Alex Caffey in the Arrows car. Old Alain Prost just swerved around there. Mansell was trying to block him, trying to get around the lap traffic, and Prost absolutely pounced in a way that only he can. Obviously, a man with 40 victories must know something about racing that everybody else does not.
Expecting a baby next month is Alain Prost and his wife Anne-Marie. Right now he's in a position to pick up 6 points in the World Championship, but it's not going to gain him any ground against the leader, Ayrton Senna, who leads by 12 in the championship over his own teammate Gerhard Berger. Your top 10 is Senna by 9.5 seconds over Prost, followed by Mansell, Nannini, Boutsen, Berger now up to 6th, Jean Alesi, Nelson Piquet, Martin Donnelly, and Derek Warwick. Riccardo Patrese is in 11th, followed by Stefano Modena, Pierluigi Martini, and Andrea De Cesaris.
And of course that move he put on Mansell and the other guys at the end of the straight, which entailed out braking, that is something you have to be very careful of. Once the tires start to get soft and blistery like that, it's so easy to make them lock up. And of course with the rubber on that point of destruction anyway, you just get the most horrendous flat spot and you have to stop then.
On board with Berger through the Peraltada. Closing in on Andrea De Cesaris and sweeping by. Great pictures aboard the car of Gerhard Berger here in Mexico. We'll take a quick time out and return to the Grand Prix of Mexico after this. 8, we will be live from the Circuit Paul Ricard at 7:50 a.m. for the Grand Prix of France. Lots of live Formula One action coming your way here on ESPN as the continental portion of the season begins.
Well, there you see everybody on the same picture. Ayrton Senna, the leader, and coming into the top of the picture with the two Ferraris of Prost and Mansell. But I have to say that looking at Senna's tyres, they certainly look better than those on the Ferrari, but of course it's pretty hard to tell on here what's exactly happening. They obviously can't be all that bad with the speeds that these two Ferraris are maintaining. Gradually catching up Ayrton Senna, only 8 seconds behind him now is Alain Prost. So, and just over 10 laps to go. So is he going to win another one by a second or what?
Well, right now if I had to bet, I think I would. Ayrton Senna. If not, he's in a totally untenable position because he'll never be able to change tires to get back on the racetrack in time. His hand has been forced. He really has to stay on the racetrack and hope to keep these guys behind him. And all signs are that he will be able to. If his tires are good, those of the Ferraris are not. As they come down the front straightaway, and the Tifosi from around the world, those in Mexico City, are waving their Ferrari flags. Just outside your picture right now is Ayrton Senna, not very far ahead of the Ferrari twins, Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell.
Of course, this also might be part of Senna's negotiating ploy, because he keeps on saying his engines keep going up. The Honda people say they don't, but I mean, that might be part of his negotiating, but there the gap is inexorably coming down to 7 seconds now. Well, 5.2.
The order is Senna, Prost, Mansell, Nannini now in 4th, Gerhard Berger 5th, Terry Boutsen 6th, Jean Alesi 7th, followed by Nelson Piquet, Martin Donnelly, and Derek Warwick. The Lotus still running strong. In 11th, Riccardo Patrese in the Williams is the last car on the lead lap.
Well,
Nelson Piquet is disappointed that he dropped so far back on that pit stop, and now behind John Alesi. And those, of course, are the first two V8 engine cars now on the track, lying in 7th and 8th spot, which is kind of where you'd expect it to be. Piquet certainly drove a blistering race to start with. Blistering, unfortunately, in more ways than one.
Sweeping through the Peraltada, Ayrton Senna can look in his mirrors now and see the Ferraris moving up. And the crowd is on its feet, some 100,000 people here in attendance at the Autodromo Hermanos Ricardo y Pedro Rodríguez in Mexico City.
The Brazilian flag's being folded up and the Ferrari flag's coming out. Boy, whoever said these crowds weren't fickle. 2.5 seconds behind.
Drawing in closer and closer. And there you see the gap is less than a couple of seconds. 2.5 seconds. I make it closer than that. Let's get a comment from John.
On the last pit board that Alain Prost saw as he splashed by the Ferrari pits, he was given exactly 2.5 seconds behind the Brazilian Ayrton Senna. We have to think that when McLaren was set up with 20 laps to go, that they might have made a mistake in not bringing in Senna. He had a 21-second lead at that point. They could have gotten him in and out on fresh tires where he could have done battle. Right now he's losing 2 seconds a lap.
He is indeed. Alain Prost moving in quickly. Mansell having a problem as Prost has now set quick lap again with the fuel running down, but his tires going away. Prost is just closing in. He's going to rocket right past. He does into the Peraltada. No, Senna holds him off.
Of course, we've been concentrating on this tire problem. It could be that Senna has another problem, but it looks like he's about to get disposed of on the straight here.
And this is what Alain Prost needs more than anything, is to beat Senna if he's going to make up ground on the championship tables. Approaching the braking area for the Solana turn. Prost to the inside, but he will not take it.
Now, one of the things that McLaren's have been having this year is a lot of trouble with their gearboxes, and they keep on breaking gears. And for instance, at Montreal, he was missing first gear. It could be that he's a gear or two short here, which is very, very badly affecting through these sort of areas here if he has to jump from, say, 2nd to 4th or whatever.
There will be 9 laps to go this time around. Plenty of time for Alain Prost to wait and stalk if he, in fact, has the advantage on Ayrton Senna at this point. Remember the Japanese Grand Prix last year at Suzuka in this same order, but both men in McLarens, Senna and Prost, they came together in the corner, and the controversy erupted afterwards. Senna got push-started and got back into the race, and in fact won the race, but he was disqualified. That rule has now been changed for 1990. Prost became the world champion. The two men have not spoken, and Senna declined a handshake from Alain Prost at the opening round of the season in Phoenix. He moves wide to go into the Peraltada. Prost right there, and Mansell moving up.
Well, Mansell's moving up now because Alain Prost is clearly faster than Nigel Mansell, but of course they're all being held up now by the leader, Ayrton Senna.
And nobody is bolder at passing than Nigel Mansell. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to take both of the cars ahead of him. Prost gets position into the turn and takes it. And now Senna must turn his attention to the man behind him, the Ferrari of Nigel Mansell. And those two have had their contretemps over the years. You can see the clapping from the corner workers. This place is going to erupt when Alain Prost comes down the front straightaway, potentially in the lead. They're as far away from the pits as they can get, into the S's in the stadium section. And Mansell closes in on the McLaren.
I think Senna is missing 3rd or 2nd gear. Because when we were in the car with him a few laps back, his gear shift pattern didn't seem right to me at the time, and I didn't put much attention to it. I think he might be missing 3rd gear.
This is the battle for 2nd. No, Mansell won't try it going into the Peraltada.
Right, give it a break, boy. Wait till you get to the straight.
The Peraltada is a turn that you can take as fast as you dare, and you don't dare go into it too wide. Mansell inside. It is Ferrari 1-2 in Mexico.
Well, 3rd gear wouldn't make any difference down there. The Ferraris seem to be as strong or stronger on the straight, and they seem to have incredible braking ability this afternoon. We've seen Prost and Mansell for that matter, outbrake and pass pretty well everybody they've come up to. Prost reckon he had a small problem with his brakes in Montreal, but he certainly doesn't have a problem with them now.
With 8 laps remaining in the Grand Prix of Mexico, it is Ferrari 1-2 for the first time since 1988, and so it is Ferrari 1-2 with 7 laps remaining. And there you see the gap back to Senna's car. I think you're right, David. He does have a problem with the McLaren.
He must have a severe problem. Of course, right behind him is now his teammate, Gerhard Berger, who's miraculously pulled way up through the field into 4th spot, although 20 seconds behind Senna. But the way Senna's going at the moment, he may be able to erase that in the next few laps.
This would be the 41st Grand Prix victory as Alain Prost continues to extend his string. And Ayrton Senna's blues continue. In his 100th Grand Prix start, he missed the pole. And now it looks like he is out of the victory. And at this point, with 7 laps to go, he may be out of the points before this race is over. Alain Prost with that band of dark on his right front, making the driver's left front tire, indicating blisters. But it hasn't slowed him down. He has set fast lap of the race at 1:17. And that reset fast race lap all time on this racetrack. We mentioned earlier that it would be very hard for these normally aspirated machines to surpass the turbocharged cars of a couple of years ago, but Alain Prost has done it in terms of race lap. His Ferrari 641 with its V12 engine has gone 1:17 and change. Here's John.
We have talked to Joe Ramirez, the only Mexican in Formula One, and the team manager for McLaren. He says that Alain Prost has definitely an advantage both tire-wise and aerodynamic-wise.
Excuse me, Nigel Mansell is off. He plunks his Ferrari in reverse. He kept it going, but he went off in turn 2. And he is back underway. Go ahead, John.
Just to quickly finish, they do not think that they do not think that Senna has a gearbox problem. He has not given that indication on the radio whatsoever. He says his handling tires are dead on his car.
And without any outside indication, gone indeed. Right rear is absolutely gone on Ayrton Senna's car. He is limping around without a chance of scoring in the points here in Mexico. But he is continuing. And he is as far away from the pits as he could possibly get.
It shouldn't have happened in the worst place. He'll be lucky to get back with that tire doing that. It'll wreak havoc on the gearbox and the drive shaft.
And so the cars pass him. Prost is gone. Mansell is gone.
Was, in fact, that tyre something to do with Nigel Mansell's spin, I wonder? Were they all involved together there?
As Senna limps around, Gerhard Berger has gone by into 3rd, Sandro Nannini into 4th, Terry Boutsen into 5th, and John Alesi into 6th. There you see Nigel Mansell looking apparently none the worse for wear after going off and narrowly missing, clobbering a tire barrier on the outside of that corner. It happened just off the next corner. He goes through turns 1 and 2, and right here is where he went off just a lap ago.
See there from that picture just how stiff these cars are. Our left, his right front wheel almost off the road there as he turns that corner. Alain Prost serenely going past Ayrton Senna, no doubt chuckling to himself, that little French chuckle that he has.
And this was exactly what Alain Prost needed. He needed to win, and he needed Senna not to finish, or at least to finish out of the points.
Well, of course, that'll make a tremendous difference to the World Championship standings as they are at the moment. And, of course, it just makes Alain Prost a target for everybody else to shoot at. He's now got 41 victories, and I'm sure that Senna has in the back of his mind that one of these days he's going to be able to surpass that.
He hasn't got 41 yet. There are 6 laps remaining.
That is absolutely true.
Excuse me, 4 laps remaining. There are 4 laps remaining. We have completed 65. There is Alain Prost, and you can bet his little French fingers are probably crossed on that steering wheel.
Absolutely.
He knows everybody is having tire trouble here.
And he knows it's not over till it's over, too.
Prost continues at your leader, and Senna has made the pit lane. John Senna will be coming your way. He's at the high end of the pit lane right now. As Alain Prost dives underneath one of the Lotus cars. Stand by, John. Here he comes.
By Ayrton Senna, the leader of this race, coming in very, very slowly. We told you that he said his tires were dead. Well, his right rear is not only dead, it's exploded. They just ran these tires right down to nothing with a failure on the right rear. Ayrton Senna says, okay, we've got 5 laps, but my Grand Prix is over. 100 Grand Prix under his belt, maybe the fastest driver in Formula One, but luck did not follow him to Mexico City. Ayrton Senna headed for the motorhome.
And that leaves Alain Prost, your leader, Nigel Mansell second in a Ferrari 1-2. The conclusion of the Grand Prix of Mexico coming your way. Gerhard Berger locks up his wheels and gets underneath Nigel Mansell for second place at turn 1 here in Mexico City.
Locked up his wheels and then locked wheels with Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell having had that spin. Nigel Mansell's tires, I would imagine, are absolutely dead as well.
Absolutely amazing move by Gerhard Berger, who fell well down in his field after he pitted on lap 12 with totally shot left side tires. He came back, has worked his way through the field, and with the help of the attrition, specifically a blown right rear tire that took Ayrton Senna out of the race off the lead, he is now running in second place.
I think Nigel Mansell's tires are pretty well shot, and again, I hate to stress it all the time, but Alain Prost just seems to have a magic touch when it comes to driving a race car in a race. His tires, there's no reason to think that his tires shouldn't have gone the same way as everybody else's, but he just managed to really baby that car along.
Alain Prost has flashed across the start-finish line. There are 2 laps remaining in the race. Gerhard Berger narrowly leads Nigel Mansell. Mansell looks like he wants a little of his back.
Yeah, I think he's pretty miffed at that pass.
Prost checks his mirrors quickly.
Nigel Mansell is right. I don't know why we're saying
we really need to get to Mansell and to Berger. They're going down the corner together. Berger swings wide to block. Mansell will try him on the outside in this corner. No.
Oh, Nigel locks up the front tire there.
He'll try him outside the second corner. No.
Well, he got Boutsen earlier on an outside part. Look at the...
It's not over yet. Mansell outside Berger. Berger keeps his foot in it. They'll get down to the next corner side by side. Ayrton Senna watches it all on television in the garage as his teammate tries to hold up McLaren colors. This is shades of Villeneuve and Arnoux in the French Grand Prix about a decade ago. It is Berger. The battle for second place continues. Berger. Mansell drops back a couple of car lengths. Prost away by about 25 seconds in front, so he is absolutely running away with the race. And Berger, you can see, is having to struggle at every corner to keep the McLaren pointed straight. Last lap. We're on the last lap of the race.
Coming into that Peraltada. Block, block, block.
Oh, outside in the Peraltada. You can't do that, but Mansell did. An outrageous pass by Nigel Mansell resumes in second place. Gerhard Berger gave it everything he had, but look at the gap. Nigel Mansell came flying off that corner and immediately opened up 4 car lengths. And the crowd in Mexico is going crazy. Berger closes in once again on Mansell. This is his last lap. I hope we don't forget our leader when he approaches the checkers. The short chute down into the stadium section on the backside. There is Prost exiting the S's onto the back straight.
Boy, what a race for second place. What a move of Nigel. I mean, Nigel just came back from nowhere. He'd slowed up for about a 4-lap period there and just suddenly completely went absolutely berserk again.
This is the final corner for Alain Prost, the 35-year-old 3-time world champion. The #1 Ferrari flashes across the finish line to a chorus of cheers from a fantastic crowd of 100,000 plus here in Mexico. A well-earned victory. Now back to the battle for second place. Gerhard Berger. 1 corner to go. Underneath lap traffic. Oh, it doesn't get any better than this. Here comes Berger closing up. The start-finish line awaits. And it is Mansell. A terrific finish. And probably the best 10 laps of closing action we've seen in a long, long time in Formula One. A well-deserved victory for Alain Prost. Mansell second, Berger third. This is unofficial now. And the Ferrari flags are flying in the pit lane. But give credit to Gerhard Berger. He came from way back in the field, took second place away from Nigel Mansell, lost it again in one of the most amazing sequences of passes we have ever seen. And it is a Ferrari 1-2. Wherever Enzo Ferrari may be today, he is no doubt smiling. And the church bells will ring in Maranello, Italy.
And of course, with that win, that vault, Alan Prost into second place in the championship with 24 points, which is only 7 points behind the leader, Ayrton Senna.
We'll be back with all of the points and summaries of today's action from Mexico City. A terrific race. We'll be back in a moment.
Running of this great race since it was revived here in Mexico City in 1986. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Grand Prix of Mexico has been brought to you by Acura Automobiles, #1 in customer satisfaction 3 years in a row. By Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Bud Light. Everything else is just a light.
Back at the circuit, Hermanos, Ricardo, and Pedro Rodríguez in Mexico City after one of the most outstanding races of the year. Alain Prost, the winner over teammate Nigel Mansell and Gerhard Berger. A while ago, John Bizignano had a moment with team manager for McLaren, Ron Dennis.
Ron Dennis, you're looking at Gerhard Berger. That has to be somewhat of a reward to see your man come in third. But what happened to Ayrton Senna?
I think we called it wrong. We had an early pit stop on Gerhard's car because he had blistered tyres, but the pressures were high. We knew that we'd started Ayrton a little lower on pressures, so we felt confident there wasn't going to be a wear problem. He called into the pits with about 10 laps to go, and I felt that a safe third would be a better route to go, but what we had was a right rear puncture, not a wear problem, so failed out on the circuit, and obviously he couldn't get back and get a place. But one of those things, you can't win them all. Put on a good show for everybody.
Thank you, John. Here are the final official results. Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell with a magnificent Ferrari 1-2. Give Gerhard Berger all the credit in the world, bringing the McLaren from 12th to a possible second. He'll settle for third place. Sandro Nannini, Terry Boutsen, and Nelson Piquet fill out the top 6. Jean Alesi leads the next 6. Good runs for Martin Donnelly and Derek Warwick. Ricardo Patrese also made a pit stop. The next 6 show Andrea de Cesaris, Paulo Barilla, and the rest as you see. We should point out that Ayrton Senna came home in 20th position after stepping out of his car with 4 laps remaining after a blown tire. Points as they come in. Ayrton Senna brought 31 points to Mexico City. He will leave with that many, and the gap has been closed. Gerhard Berger and Alain Prost tied for second with 23 apiece. Jean Alesi, Nelson Piquet, and Nigel Mansell tied for third with 13 apiece. Well, after this race, certainly the next event